Get this to a new file.
Trace and affection. It's still so much easier.
Yeah. Oh, kids can be great dogs.
To get a new
They're
recording.
They really can.
super emotional.
Yeah.
So if I even yell at
So
them, I have to remember that I yelled.
right
at
now
them,
it's
they're gonna go
my
find a
press
shoe or do something. Make
Well,
sure
maybe
the
push
kid
it back.
Baxter's Revenge, if he ever got really mad at us, he's a pretty easy dog.
Oh, okay.
And now you
But if he ever
press
got really mad at us.
record
he would
again, I
poop
think
right
we'll
at the front door.
struggle.
Only time he went in
I
the
see it turn
house,
to a
he'd be
circle.
right at the front door. Like,
Then
all right,
press
y'all.
pause.
Okay, so this is the City of Craig Council meeting of Thursday, August 20th, 2020.
Maybe it's all just.
Is that us?
Yeah.
Do we have anybody else coming?
Yeah.
Dave will not be here tonight. He called in to say he wouldn't be able to make it, but Tim should be here. They should know.
So bright in here compared to outside.
Sorry, yeah, I just.
How are you doing?
Got it, thank you.
Are you okay with me being here, having traveled a week ago?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I typed up the minutes for July 16th and put them in front of your places. In case you have a chance to read them, you can consider approving during the meeting.
I can't remember what Mary asked you. Did you get applications for the clerk job as well?
We did. We got 3. Offered the job to one applicant, and she declined. Offered the job to the second, who really wants it, but who's having trouble lining up childcare for her special needs child.
Oh. They don't take special needs at the daycare?
This child older,
Oh, okay.
too old for the daycare. So hoping she'll figure that out.
Mm-hmm.
It's been a long time since I typed minutes.
Seems so long ago. I wasn't here, but I watched it and it's.
That's the way this whole year's been,
Yeah.
since March anyway. Anybody have a phone handy? Should we text him and? Or should I go up and get mine?
I got it.
I got mine. You have one as well, too?
Yeah.
You see Minnie on there?
Is she gonna speak tonight?
She's gonna zoom in. and talk about the airlift or the medevac benefit program.
No, I did not see her on the Zoom meeting yet.
He said give to Jim 15 minutes.
So we have the option of waiting 15 minutes, Jim, or if you're willing to share the meeting, we can begin sooner.
I think we can begin today by the time when the mayor gets here, he'll be here for the hot topics.
Shall I start the recording?
Are we okay with that?
Shall I start the recording?
Go.
Recording.
Here we're gonna call the meeting of August 20th, 2020 to order at this point. John, please call the roll.
Julie McDonald,
Present.
Hannah Bezanet,
Here.
Jim C.,
Here.
Michael Campnich, Chanel McKinley,
Here.
David Creighton is absent, excused. Mayor Timothy O'Connor has yet to arrive, has indicated he will arrive late. Quorum is present.
Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. Can I get a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second?
Okay, it's been moved and seconded to accept the consent agenda. Is there any discussion? All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed, the same. Hearing from the public, you have, is it nobody online?
Nobody's requested to testify.
And everybody's had a chance to read the multiple page discussion letter? We're all good with what's going on from there. Anybody have any comments on that? On the letter that was written by Ben Davies?
Who was that?
Hmm?
That's somebody from Kitchener?
Yes.
It was the public comment letter that was.
Yeah, I read it all, I just was really,
Yeah, I was like, it sounds like a familiar name, but.
right, that's what I was, yeah.
I just wanted to give time for anybody to comment if they wanted to, so. No comments there, we can go to reading correspondence. Does anybody have anything in there they'd like to pull out?
Just comment, it's,
Yeah.
it was encouraging to see our sales tax is, as healthy as it has been.
Yeah, it's not terrible, so, yeah,
Right.
I was impressed too. The one thing that I would like to, we don't need to bring it up, but I'd like to comment on the DNR timber sale notice that I think we need to send a letter, if they're gonna do state logging here, somehow they need to leave the roads open for a year or two afterwards so that we can harvest it. It's getting harder and harder for the people who need wood for their wood stoves. And as soon as they back out of those roads, they shut them off and nobody can get to all that. You walk in there and you just drool over the wonderful dead yellow cedar that's laying around. So I'd like to see us do a comment like that with them and have them, somebody else can go close that road.
Or they can pull it all to the end.
Yeah.
Before
So
they close
I'd
it.
like to see some kind of comment on that from the city.
Everybody, it's gonna get used
Yeah.
if it's available.
Yeah, I would, I would suggest the city just write a letter, as you suggested, DNR, saying that it's, especially in this time that, the opportunity to score a load of firewood is important for a lot of people and,
Right.
we'd ask the state to look at ways to leave the road open for a year or two. I mean, I know they gotta close them off and they wanna put them to bed and stuff, culverts and stuff eventually, but this has been something both the Forest Service and the state they consistently do, and it's frustrating.
Right, well, the state seems to, the feds seem to think they're mandated by the roadless rule to do it, so that's their excuse. But anyway, I'd like to see that comment, because it's getting more and more difficult to get wood for the people.
Okay, understood.
Thank you. Okay, there are no resolutions or ordinances, so we can go to unfinished business update on CARES funding.
Mr. Chairman, there's a memo in the packet, of course, the two-pager. It contains two projections of where we might end up with regard to the CARES Act funding that the city is eligible to receive. As you can see from the memo, and as we told you before, we don't have all this money in hand yet. We've been sent the initial payment, and as soon as we reach an 80% mark on appropriate or spending those monies, the second and then the third payment comes. This gives you an idea about a couple of options or ways we could approach it to either be good with the 700,000 that goes back, or be good with the 400,000 that might go back, or give staff direction to figure out ways to try to keep the money in the community if we can. Brian and I have talked at some length about options for expanding some of the existing economic relief programs that the council's already approved, and we could head in that direction. Brian actually came up with some thoughts about how to approach continuing to do what we're doing and still perhaps widening the benefit and still staying compliant with the program. So we are giving some thought to this. What I'm looking for here is general direction from the council on what steps you want staff to take, what goal you would like us to try to meet with regard to the COVID money in terms of distribution locally or retention locally versus sending or not appropriating the full balance that would otherwise be due to the city. So I'm happy to try to answer questions and ultimately looking for some direction.
One of the things I think is gonna have, a big impact is gonna be whether they change the rules or not.
As I said in the memo, yes, that's
If they
right.
change the rules, we're gonna be much more likely to get to the end number, but that's my main comment. It's not the end of the world if we get money back to the federal government, though, in my opinion, either, because so long as they don't just pass it on to somebody else, because the debt is pretty intense from this whole thing, so. That's my comment. We're open.
Something that just popped into my mind in terms of COVID related stuff and healthcare. Have we approached Peace Health and to inquire about opportunities that we could work with them and for our clinic here and something that would be related that this might fulfill?
Yes. We have the physician that's there now is advocated at one point for adding another positive pressure exam room into the building. The one that's there is currently a positive pressure exam room, the first door on the right, first exam door on the right, you come to when you leave the lobby. He was advocating, I think, for the last room on the right.
Yeah.
Right. We actually mentioned this to the council early on, I think in April, that this was one option, and it's up on the board there. If the timeline for spending the money doesn't change, probably if the council wants to move ahead with that option, the best we could do is get it designed, because it would require a full architectural workup. Well, because you're talking about installing new mechanical systems to handle the airflow, better control the movement of air in and out of the room. So you'd have to modify the existing mechanical system, be some architectural work, right? Because some of the building structure would have to change as well. But if the timeline is to expend the money is extended, it's possible we could move into construction. Given what we know about these kind of projects, it would likely be a pretty big ticket item, and maybe beyond the reach of what we would have remaining.
We can't piggyback on what's done in room one.
The physician had a specific interest in having the room on the north end of the building.
No, I agree with that, because that way the person doesn't have to come through the clinic, but I'm just saying, if that one's already positive pressure, if there's already a fan up there that sucks the air through that room without letting any air into the other system, it can't be that big of a.
See, what I don't know is if the walls in that building or in that room or the ceiling or some other feature has to be changed to make it compliant. That I don't know.
It's on the end, it should be easy to vent that room, but then again, who knows? Engineers just tick me off, is it gonna cost so much money to deal with that, it's like.
But yes, that, we have talked with Peace Health about that, and that was the physician's request, is consider changing that room to positive pressure, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
Did he, I mean, is there even a, kind of a wild idea of what something like that would cost? It sounds like it's in the hundreds.
I'd hate to hazard a guess, Michael. The design work will be easily in the tens of thousands. The construction, remodeling something, I don't know.
If that one might be out of league, I mean, they're just maybe it's worth inquiring again over the course of, from earlier when this whole pandemic thing came upon us. It's highly likely better perspectives and better ideas of, what we need and what works good and stuff like that. I mean, just inquire again and see if there's an opportunity to help them.
We do meet, Stacy May and I meet with all of the healthcare providers every other week on Wednesday morning, and we do talk about, a little bit, we talk about some of those issues. And in addition to that, all of the healthcare providers are part of our Emergency Operations Center meeting that takes place every other Thursday. And talking about CARES money has been a specific item. So we're kind of constantly touching base with the healthcare providers and talking about or offering up the fact that we have CARES money and looking for projects. But we'll continue to do that. We'll continue to reach out to them.
You're way ahead of me.
So some things that come to my mind are flu season approaching. And, in the past through the health network, we were able to do these pod exercises where we did a lot of immunizing. We would go to I know in Heidelberg when they had a cross country meet, we did one down there. We gave out free flu vaccines and there's been these events. That money has since gone away. And I know the clinics and public health are already stretched pretty thin. So just thinking about some way of having a robust flu vaccine, that would be coordinating with public health and such, but what can we do to, I know public health's already thinking about it and working on it, but I don't know if that would involve buying flu vaccine or helping facilitate an event. So that's one thing that comes to my mind. Another thing is, of course, the EMS and increasing our volunteer EMS. And I don't know what that would look like or how we would do that, but maybe if we can use some of the funds to have some training and recruitment of some kind.
So we are offering training,
Yeah,
ETT class training at the Voctech Center, sponsored by the city, with an eye toward boosting recruitment and getting more volunteers on our roster.
oh, good. So when is that event?
The class starts September 29th.
Okay.
And they'll do a combination of Zoom and classroom and homework between September 29th and October 22nd.
Is that on, I haven't seen it advertised, and that maybe I've just been, my hands.
It's on, I
Chris
saw it on one
Kane
of
has
them.
been advertising it, I saw it on all the sites,
The PW site and stuff.
My chamber.
I haven't been on Facebook lately.
It's just started advertising. I just approved the flyer.
Okay, well, I personally would like to
yesterday.
go too, but anyways, so, okay.
So yeah, we're working on
And it's being a little bit narrowly advertised to start with, targeting Craig. So the class will ultimately be open until it's filled. But I have asked the Voctech Center director, who is managing the class for us, managing the advertisement and signing folks up and conducting the class, that no Craig students be turned away. So part of that process is that she's more narrowly advertising it at first, trying to target Craig residents before she really broadens the advertisement out to other communities.
Okay,
Yeah, that's been explained in the ones that have been on Facebook, so.
okay. I had a third one, but now it's gone. That's just where my brain's at.
I was thinking of reaching out to those nonprofit organizations again, just because we only got a couple. And I feel like the daycare center, I feel like could ask for more help. And maybe, like Hannah mentioned last time, the skate park committee.
It'd be really, really nice to somehow be able to get some more stuff going for the kids.
Oh, that was my third one. Thank you, you reminded me. So if that, I know we had talked in our provider meeting this past Wednesday about, you know, if there's anything we could be doing to help kind of keep the school open and safe. If there's anything we could be doing to help the school stay open, because that has huge things. And then along with that, and again, I don't know if this would qualify or work, but if there's anything we could do about, a lot of kids are gotten really far behind. And the school, you know, it might be open, it might be half days, we don't know. So I don't know if there can be any kind of like tutoring or something done for kids that are behind that would want some extra catch up. And that was my 3 ideas.
I have a phone call scheduled with superintendent next week.
Yeah.
And I will ask him, I'll kind of expand the discussion to ask those questions. Right now, we're working with the school districts around the island to make sure that they have the supplies that they need to open up. So I've just given the Craig School District a supply of sanitizer. We opened the MMRS container up today, and we still have a substantial amount of hand sanitizer and paper face masks that we'll be dividing up and distributing to the 4 school districts. So part of the money will be used to replace a number of those supplies in the MMRS container. And I will though continue to ask Chris if there are other ways that we can supplement the school's budget.
And well, and there's other things too, like the music department, I was reading in the emails, there's a lot of restrictions on what music can do, and they can only do certain instruments, but then they don't have enough of those
Right.
instruments.
Right.
So there could be some unique ways to help out, even beyond, and that is a good start, and I'm glad we had that and followed up with that, with the actual protection supplies, but there may be other needs.
Water is kind of a concern, so they have to have water bottles. And I'm wondering, like, is that gonna be a burden for parents, everybody, because kids are gonna lose them. Like, I feel like we need to be buying water bottles in bulk. I donated a bunch to the high school, but you know how kids are, like, they're gonna leave them at the park and this and that, and they're not letting them use water fountains, so you have to have a water bottle.
I mean, reusable,
Mm-hmm.
just durable, I see, okay.
Yeah.
I'll work with Chris and ask him, especially about kind of these, the issues that we haven't thought about so much for the schools. And I do have a couple of other suggestions on some things that we can do with the money, both in the short term and long term. And I'll start with this discussion about getting more money out to the nonprofits. So as you know, we've done 2 rounds of grants for small businesses and nonprofits. The first one, I got the last check out to the business today. The second one, there's another 30 applications that I'm looking for the council to consider approval tonight. I talked before to the council about the potential of going out for another round of funding for businesses in Craig. We're in a position where we can see what the business loss is between this year and last year for the April through June quarter. So rather than doing applications for small businesses, we'll likely bring to the council a list of businesses that show a loss between this year and last year and recommend a check that represents some percentage of that loss, depending on
Loss in their sales tax return, right?
loss based on the gross revenue shown on their sales tax return. That doesn't cover nonprofits, nor does it cover small businesses that don't report sales tax. For example, the commercial fishermen don't report sales tax if small businesses. And sorry, I'm drawing a blank. it seemed like there was one or two others. Anyway, there's a couple of entities that don't pay sales tax, and we don't have sales tax data for them to report. And I still haven't wrapped my head around what a program to reach out to those folks would be like, similar to the sales tax for small businesses. But it's likely that I will come back to the council with a proposal after I've looked at the individual sales tax data for this the quarter that ended in June, and see what the business losses were between 2019 and 2020. I'll come back to the council with some recommendations on if the council is interested in a third round of small business loans. At the same time, I will bring some proposal to put funding out to nonprofits and businesses that don't pay sales tax. So that's one program that I'll be coming back to the council with some information on as we go forward here in the next couple of council meetings. In addition, there are a couple of other items that I think that we could do. I've gathered a little bit of preliminary data on, and one of those, one item, of course, you'll be talking about tonight, that's the medevac insurance, which John has done the research and provided a memo in the packet. In addition to that, I had a conversation with AT&T this week, and AT&T tells me that there are about 400 residential electric services in Craig that for AT&T bring in about $60,000 a month. And there's some potential based on the program that Ketchikan is doing. It's a fairly easy process, I think, if we can get AT&T to help us out to notify these customers of their eligibility for some individual relief. And in broad brush strokes, we would ask AT&T to send all of these folks a flyer. We would make folks who live inside the Craig city limits eligible. We would have them return some short form attaching to COVID impacts on their finances. And then we would send a list of eligible ratepayers and an amount approved by the council and a payment to AT&T to credit those accounts. So that may be one way to do some individual assistance that's fairly easy to get out and not overly difficult to process. The other program that Ketchikan has been doing recently that I found interesting is a rent mortgage relief program. They actually had Community Connections run the program for them. And Community Connections has reported that the program was very well received and actually ran very smoothly. I asked Community Connections, I had a conversation with Community Connections this week and asked them if they would be willing to manage a similar program for the city of Craig. And they are not able to. They don't have the staffing or the facilities over here to be able to do it. But they have given me access to the forms that they've used and the folks that have run the program for them in Ketchikan to provide some technical assistance. I think we can pull it off. And so if that's something that the council is interested in. One of the nice things about all of these programs is that they don't all have to be big lump sum right at the beginning. So I know we're waiting on legislation to talk about either extending the timeline that we can use this money or whether we can use this money for lost revenue replacement. One of the advantages of looking at like a utility electric relief program or rental mortgage relief is we can choose a smaller dollar amount to start with. And then as we get closer and closer to the end of the year, if Congress has not changed the parameters of the CARES Act, we can go back to those same applicants and just give them an additional amount of relief funding. All of this, one last item that I have that I want to throw out there to use some of the CARES money for is, especially if we add some of these other programs, my plate is about this full and it's about this big. And so I've asked Misty Fitzpatrick if she would work for the city part-time on a contract basis, specifically to assist me with managing these CARES Act funding programs. Misty is great. She's fantastic. was my first phone call actually when I was thinking about some help. So she has committed theoretically to give me 10 or 15 hours a week for the next several months to help manage the program. And that, of course, is an eligible item to be paid out of the CARES Act money, since that's specifically what we'd be hiring her for. So those are some of the other thoughts that I've had, John and I have talked about in terms of using the money between now and December, especially if the council is interested more on the end of seeing the money distributed within the community rather than returned. Some of those programs can be fairly high dollar items, and as you saw in the memo, if we move the economic assistance funding from the general fund to the CARES Act, which I think we're fully eligible to do now with no problems, that leaves us about $400,000 that we have not yet allocated, that would be left over at the end of the year if we don't allocate it to something else. The programs I've talked about so far, we can probably get to that number fairly easily by the end of the year if we choose to.
Might just add, if I could, that I'm a little bit concerned about capital projects. I know that capital project proposed by a community, oh my gosh, I'm drawing a blank on which one, got a thumbs down from the Treasury Department.
Anchorage.
Was it Anchorage?
Yeah.
To build some, either acquire or construct a facility that would be initial housing, I think, for COVID, and then used for some other purpose afterward. And so we want to approach that a little with an eye toward the any improvements to the healthcare center building with an eye toward that that restriction. Doesn't mean it's impossible. It just have to be a little bit careful. That's the first time I've seen the Inspector General say no to a CARES project.
So like the roof at Power would probably not be.
I'd have to think about that, but at first blush, it's hard to see how it would work.
Well, I'm just saying this Power is helping people.
Mhm.
The roof is caving in.
My overall thought is that if the money is available, and, you know, I like the proposal you guys have suggested, the power, you know, helping support power, things like that. I feel like, you know, if we can target these different entities and individuals or businesses, we should continue looking to do so within reason. I mean, I suggested something that might be a stretch, but I still think we should be trying to support our community as much as possible.
Do you guys have somebody hired for professional cleaning here?
We do have a contract cleaner that we've increased the services that they do for us.
Would they be able to do like the gym and open up rentals every once in a while?
Yes, I think so.
Because with the weather changing a lot, I feel like that's something we should look towards. The kids
Weather
need to get out.
changing, is it gonna get better? Is it gonna get better?
It's getting worse, so I'm not looking forward to it.
Good idea.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, cause I don't know if Victoria's gonna open up her after-school program.
Yeah, we need to have something. We need to start having more things available.
Okay, thank you.
Just, oops. Just did the update. Here's an hour. We're good with that. We're gonna go on to the update on the response. Are we ready for that?
COVID, yeah.
So there's a memo in the packet. I really don't have a whole lot to add other than right now, part of the focus is helping the schools get to a good point of opening. They're finding that they've all the districts that I've talked to have ordered the supplies that they need, but are finding that masks and hand sanitizer and cleaning wipes and a number of other things, the supply chain is just not caught up nationwide. So we're working right now as hard as we can to get the districts in a good position to start. Other than that, if there's any questions on the memo, I'd be happy to answer.
The one thing I'd like to say is we need to make sure we hold on to enough in case something major does go down this fall though for us. We have to do that.
We do, and we're catching our supply chain up as well.
And I'm still a proponent, I know that the original stuff came from a grant, but the replacement we need help from all the entities that end up, if they wanna get a second shot at this stuff, they need the help, that's my opinion.
Brian and I discussed that, that very thing today, and ways to go about doing that.
And one other comment I have right now while I'm thinking about it is, you realize the teachers weren't supposed to go back to school until next week, but somehow they have extra money, so the teachers have been offered going to school to make extra money this week. I'm a little concerned, I don't know where that money came from, but if they have money to do that, they must have money to do some other things. And my other question is, did the guy ever respond? Did you ever call him and say we weren't happy about the Thursday meeting?
I talked to the superintendent twice since the last meeting, but I did not bring up that point. But I won't forget next time. I can call him tomorrow.
You know, it just confused me, one of the teachers said, oh yeah, we got a good deal going, it's like, you don't have to go to school this week, but we get paid extra, and we're gonna do the same thing this week that we were gonna do next week, I'm going, what? It's just my.
I can't speak to where they're getting the money from, Jim. I don't know.
No,
I will say, to date, the school district has not requested any of the city's CARES Act funds for anything. They've recently requested some supplies, but that wasn't really a finance issue. It was a matter of not getting their order in. But we haven't moved any CARES Act money for any school functions to this point.
Might be good, a little extra preparation, huh? All this new, it's a whole new, different school year, so.
Does the UVC lights really work for cleaning and killing, sanitizing?
Like anything with COVID, depends on which thing you look
So I
at.
see that authority, you can just like put them in a room and turn them on and they're supposed to,
They actually have wands that you can pass over shit and money. It's just Virginia's using it at the shop on the money.
I have a box that I have to sanitize my money and everything, but I was just wondering if it was a room.
I think the literature is promising. I'm not sure I can go so far as to say definitively that it works or doesn't work. We've looked at some, there's a company in Alaska that was making a UV light box that they were marketing primarily to first responders as a way to disinfect vehicles. And RJ and I talked about it a little bit, but
Not convinced.
RJ was, not convinced it was a good purchase.
I don't think it reached the corners and all the angles and stuff under the girders and all that, it just would not be effective. I can't see it being that way. If you could gas it in there or something, it might, but
But I'll keep an eye on the technology.
you keep going.
yeah.
So we're gonna go to new business, review preliminary decision from Alaska Department of Natural Resources on Thailand conveyance.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, there's a brief cover memo and the copy of the state's initial preliminary determination on conveying the tidelands where the downtown harbor breakwater would go to the city, the title to the city. The decision is positive, but it's also preliminary. The state of Alaska is taking public comment now on their preliminary decision. They'll issue a final decision hopefully by October, at which point Once the final decision is made, the city has management authority over the tidelands. So the actual title won't convey until they're surveyed somewhere down the line after we go through the survey instruction development process with the state. So I plan on sending comments into the state saying, we support the decision. It's what we asked for. We encourage the state to move ahead. If the council has any other comments or questions, I'd be happy to hear them.
I have a comment, gentlemen.
Yes.
I wasn't terribly happy with Fish and Game. Can't do any, they would prefer we not do anything from June to November because of the Mexican humpback whale and sea lions. It's like, what?
Standard response from the resource agencies. I think we'll be able to work around that, given the presence of whales here so much through the year.
I'm thinking so.
And I mean, they are in the harbor from time to time, but far more often they're out away from town.
No, yeah.
I don't think our harbor is also critical habitat for either species.
No. Okay, we're good with that, people? So, review the applications for the City of Craigtown to CARES Act Economic Relief Program.
I don't have a whole lot to add. There were 31 applications. I was happy to see lots of commercial fishermen applied this round. Of the 31 applications, there was only one application that was ineligible. And that was a crew member on a vessel applied separately than the vessel owner. And it really turned out to be more of a request for individual assistance than business assistance since she was an employee and not a business owner. The business, the fishing vessel that she cruised on, is eligible. And I had a talk with the vessel owner and told him that payroll, even for an employee that was not able to make it into town and work, was an eligible expense. And so if he wanted to see some relief for the crew member, that he could make a payroll payment to the crew member out of the economic assistance funding that we would pay him. The other 30 applications were all eligible. That I will note included the three of the applications that were deemed ineligible in the first round. And under the modified criteria that the council approved, those three entities are eligible. It's a total of $115,000 in grant funds if they are fully funded on the advertised amounts. The council may recall that there's $55,000 left over from what the council appropriated in the first round. So in order to fully fund all 30 grants, the council would need to appropriate an additional $60,000 that could come from the CARES Act funding in order to make all of those grants, fund all of those grants to the maximum advertised amount. The council can also choose to stick with the $55,000 and fund them all at a partial amount, which is about 48% of what the maximum grant amount would be.
A question again, the original amount was from the general fund, but we've since been able to change that over to CARES funding, correct?
Yes, I don't believe that we have made a draw yet
We haven't.
for the funds, but based on some guidance that Southeast Conference has shared with us that is coming out of the Department of Administration, all of those restrictions are gone. And so we can now go back to the first $145,000 worth of grants and reimburse the city out of CARES money, and the entire $115,000 out of this round can be reimbursed from CARES money.
Or it can come just out of CARES money then,
Yes.
or not?
Yeah, although we've been using the CARES money more on a reimbursement basis.
Oh,
So we kind of make the expenses and then make a transfer from the CARES account to the city fund.
Okay.
Or general fund, back into it.
So both round one, to be absolutely clear, both all of the funding from round one and all of the funding from round two is CARES Act eligible at this point. on the memo that John included earlier about the general funding discussion. That puts us on the table that leaves 400,000 at the end of the year. So that was the big difference between the two tables, was whether or not we were able to move that economic assistance funding.
So we need to approve, if we want to do the 115,000, we need to approve $60,000 more
Yes.
in CARES Act funding.
Yeah, before we go further, just for the council's awareness, I am one of the applicants. I want to make that clear. Okay.
Did you apply to?
No.
Move to approve eligible application for Craig 2020 COVID-19 Economic Assistance Round 2 grants listed by staff and direct staff to execute grant agreements plus
60,000.
plus 60,000.
Yes, ma'am.
Second.
Motion's been seconded to approve the grants. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed?
Michael? Mr. Mayor, Michael, do you wish to abstain?
I can, it's obviously, it's gonna carry, just for the clearness of it, I can.
Okay.
Good idea. Vested interest.
Yeah.
Dial your name. She's still not on the Zoom meeting, but if you want to dial her cell phone.
Okay, thank you.
Next here we need radio company.
Yes. I'm not sure. So we did that. Okay. Review solicitation. That is where we're at.
Did you get a response back from the medevac flight service?
I sent an email when we talked today. She responded. She said she estimated 30 responses last year, but she wasn't sure. She would need to check with their flight engineer, or, flight manager. And they didn't hear back again from her before the meeting.
That was for airlift northwest.
Yes.
30 out of what, 280 or so that we had last year, medevacs.
What were we discussing?
We're considering the solicitation for medevac memberships.
Okay, so you're saying there was like 30 memberships in the city of Craig?
No,
No.
we're talking about the number of medevacs that Airlift Northwest
Uh-huh,
did for the island.
uh-huh.
Because I asked her in the last meeting when she was on the phone, how many of those medevacs that we had did they actually do?
Mhm.
So that I could kind of estimate what their rate of participation was.
Yeah, they asked us for money to help with it, and we figured this way's giving back to the member or our community and giving them money to help.
So just buy membership
Buy
for the whole
memberships.
city.
And this is actually one of the ideas that somebody had brought to me that I gave to Brian originally, so I think it's a great idea.
John, go ahead.
So what I'm suggesting, the approach I'm suggesting that we take here is to contact the 3 carriers that have served Prince of Wales. And send the solicitation to each, ask them to respond by a certain date. If we get responses from all 3, we can offer our residents, our households, a choice of which of the 3 they want. And we can set up a mechanism for them to sign up for either Airlift or Guardian or MedFlight, whatever the third one is called. I'm sorry, I don't recall the name of the company. And then the proposals that we get back from the air carriers is we'll provide this medevac flight insurance for the next 12 months at this cost per household. And so at that point, the city can either accept or not accept those proposals and offer them to the public. The public can take their choice of the three if they have a preference. And then we could tally that. We end up writing 3 checks, one to each of the air medevac companies based upon however many those memberships the public selected. I'll try to make it clear in here that they would need to offer the service regardless of whether or not the household carried insurance, which I think is part of what the discussion that was had at the last meeting. I also got an email from Minnie Ellison, working at our EMS department, who suggested that if there was a way to tie in recertification of our EMT, EMT1, EMT2s, and EMT3s through the expertise from one of these medevac companies, that we could ask for a proposal to that as well. And I'm happy to do that. It seems like it might be a good fit in the overall proposal, what we're trying to do. It also helps our medevac, our EMTs, which of course are closely tied to the medevac services here on the island. So having said that, like I said, I'm happy to answer questions.
One of the main questions is we need to contact Search to see whether, I know they have some type of contract with the one.
With Guardian.
Are they willing to call people to the other services?
And I put that question to Search, and the response I got was not crystal clear. They didn't say that they wouldn't provide or call and provider other than Guardian, but I didn't get an affirmative or negative response either way. So I can try again.
If we do shoot this out to people to pick, each one and say nobody picks the airlines or the airlift that requested us money, are we planning on still providing them with money that they asked, or?
That would be up to the council, but at this point, with the way I have it structured, I would say no, unless the council directed us otherwise. It would be based entirely on membership.
Right, 'cause was this the one that, isn't, what was it, like, almost like not a nonprofit, but, yeah.
Airlift Northwest is an
Yeah,
University of
yeah.
Washington.
right. It's an arm of the University of Washington.
So I think that we still should,
We don't know what the other medevacs will come back with, we don't know. what-
right, if they will or
Yeah.
not. But I feel like a lot of people in town will see Guardian and know that name and probably pick it, just because they know about it, if we offer all 3 memberships. I'm just saying something to think about.
I wouldn't be surprised if
Right.
one of the
that's-
medevac services took out an ad in the Island Post saying, if the council approves this, promoting their service and trying to encourage people to pick them over somebody else. I could see that effort being made.
But then there are times when they're not available, when Airlift Northwest does come, and I'm not sure who the initial call goes to from
Alicia
the
Roberts.
Craig Clinic.
Oh, from Peace Health?
Yeah, I don't know whether,
I don't know
I
either.
don't know whether they're the people who called the 30 or whether Airlift Northwest just helped out 30 times when Guardian couldn't do it.
I don't know either. I don't know the answer to that.
I was Airlift Northwest, but when I was sent out of this clinic, so. But I don't, maybe
Oh,
nobody
right.
else was available.
Right. They also had that bubble thing, which was.
Right,
Mhm,
they can transport COVID
mhm,
patients
Yeah.
safely,
Airlift West, man.
mhm.
yeah.
But these are dynamics that individuals face when they buy one insurance anyway. There's always going to be some uncertainty who's going to get called. If the council does approve this, Mr. Mayor, I might put some finishing touches on the solicitation the draft solicitation that's in the packet. I haven't run it by Bob yet, but it will look largely like what you're seeing in the packet today.
This is what he's gonna send to them. That's the solicitation letter, right?
Yes, and then there was a second page that's got the disclaimers on it.
Yeah. What say you, council?
It looks fine to me.
Yeah.
Find out what they have to say. Doesn't lock us into anything, it's either getting request for proposal, or whatever the wording is, so.
Do we need to do a motion on this, John, or just you look for direction?
Oh, we'll wait for the motion when we actually, if the council actually ends up accepting one or more of the bids. But I've got a consensus from the council that you want us to move ahead, so we will.
So we're gonna consider the appointment of the election judges. Are you ready to move on from that little subject? If we are, let's do that.
Mr. Mayor, it turns out that Sarah Altman will not be available to assist in the election in October. She'll be out of town.
Oh, she will.
Yes, so we should probably scratch your name off the list.
Are we looking for somebody else?
We have a meeting set up with Ashley Knock tomorrow, the head judge for the municipal election, so we'll talk a little bit about that. We've got a couple more meetings.
Then we can approve another person
Right.
later, we can approve these people now, and another person later.
Precisely.
Are we on that subject now?
Yeah.
Move to appoint Ashley Knox, Karen Coffey, Evelyn Wilburn, Shirley Harris, Brian Templin as 2020 municipal election judges. Move to approve a stipend of $200 for the chairwoman judge and a stipend of $150 for each participating election judge.
Second.
Motion been seconded to approve the recommendations minus Sarah Altman. And for the money that's set forth for compensation. All in favor?
Aye.
Or discussions? Sorry, guys. Nothing to discuss, you're done. So all in favor,
Aye.
opposed?
Thank you.
Mike?
Yeah, I just would like to make a comment. I think that the primary went real well. I'd like to acknowledge all these people, or the people that were part of this, setting it up and, you know, making sure we had good social distancing. I actually heard people comment on the process. And just acknowledge that they did a good job on that.
And my thanks to the judges as well, including Brian, who spent a lot of time over there and helped set up and organize it.
I went over there to eat lunch.
You may have done that as well.
So are we moving on to the newsletter?
Yes.
Looks good.
I had one comment on the, I think you did a really good job. Brian, are you looking at this together?
John.
John, you did a really good job on the second page, we got the picture of the harbor, this one. Really good, and as much as you could, trimmed down the wording, but explained it. The third paragraph, where it says the 4.4 million subject to ballot measure, da, da, da. I would suggest adding another sentence on there, something to the effect that this isn't just something that they do every year. Like, I don't know how to exactly word it, but this was something that was like kind of a once in a blue moon opportunity, but obviously worded much more professional. Because if I was reading this, I wouldn't understand, I would think that this
The
is something,
magnitude.
yeah, I wouldn't understand that this is not some, I would think that this is something that the Army Corps does.
It's the third paragraph you said.
Yeah, that's where I would suggest adding some kind of bolded sentence that this is Brian, help me out with the wording. The fact that we were granted this opportunity,
Doesn't have.
Something to affect that this is a result of a process that's been going on since 2012.
yeah, and that there's only like
So many.
so many that are done. I should have thought better how to word this, but something to that effect that would make people understand this is not something that we could decide to do 2 years from now, and the court just be like, sure, we'll pay for 80% 2 years from now.
Maybe not on that part, but maybe above where it's just explaining.
Just clarify it to them at least, that if we walk away from this opportunity, odds are we're not gonna be able to walk back into it.
Probably not, it could be another 10 or 20 years,
It could be,
or never,
or never.
because that's the driving force behind me.
Exactly. Well, this is a one-time opportunity, basically. We need to move on it if we're gonna do it. So that's pretty much the bottom line.
Yeah, because I tend to be pretty conservative, so when you throw that number out there to me, I'd be like, I don't want to vote for that, but understanding the dynamics behind it,
It is a lot of money.
yeah.
It is, but we need to clarify it to the people. It is a one-time opportunity.
But other than that, it all looked really good to me.
But there is, the process essentially would be, and I'm not sure how we'll word it, but the process, if we walk away, would essentially be, we might come back in 2 years and want to do the project again. The Corps would make us go back to the beginning of the feasibility study phase of the process,
Yeah.
which would take us back to
Yeah, so there's-
2012.
Yes, there's basically two sides of it. The fact that we've already invested so much and we would have to basically start over. And the second side of you don't get granted this.
You know, there's city time and money been invested into this since, like you said, 2012. We're just now approaching some kind of, maybe get it off the board onto the.
And not that I want to sway our voters. I want them to vote however they feel, but I want them to have all the information.
They need to be aware that if we don't do this now, the opportunity may not present itself again.
And if at that point they decide still not to do it, you
And
know,
it's their choice.
that's their choice, but
No, I agree. We need to clarify that somehow, that this is not one-time opportunity. It's not like you two ain't got nothing to do between elections and COVID
yeah.
and this other stuff. And you being the only ones that are in here pretty much.
Okay, I think I understand. Thank you.
Also, I don't know if this is a good time to bring this up or not, but I was wondering why on our ballots, we don't have like C, A, and B, like running against, instead of just a group, like whoever gets the most votes, here you go, like
Yeah, it
Say
definitely
somebody,
needs to have C, A,
like,
B, C.
wants,
whatever.
like Dave running again, or Dave's seat, you know, is A, and so I wanna run for seat A and not seat B against Julie or something.
Right,
We've had this discussion
I've
before.
been trying to do this for 20 years.
me too. I don't like it. I don't let, most people don't even pick two. They don't understand that. They'll pick one. If you tally up all the votes, there's not enough votes there ever. It needs to be C1 or C A, B, C, D, or whatever.
Seed A, seed B.
Municipalities have the option to assign seat numbers under law or to not. Some do it at large, some do it by seat. It's just a matter of changing the municipal code by ordinance.
Is that what we want to do?
I think
I
we should.
Yeah, are we allowed to do that for the school board one, or do they have to do that themselves?
That's an excellent question. I never thought of it in terms of the school board. I can find out though.
Okay.
And of course, it won't apply to this election, even if the
Right,
council
right.
does end up approving something.
Yeah.
So do we have to? Oh, sorry.
Like this kind
I know there's pros and cons to both sides of this. I would just ask that we, maybe we have some research done of how both systems work. This has been discussed before, and, as I've said on that end of the spectrum in the past, this has been brought up. I think it would be good to just look at the pros and the cons. I mean, with an open election, sometimes you just vote for one person. With a seated election, then you have the option of knowing you can vote to support somebody, but still vote on the second one and not affect the first one. So that's a pro.
Mhm.
Anyways, I just would like to have, good research so that when we if we do consider changing the way we do this, that we have as much information as possible to make a decision.
Mhm.
Because I know there's pros and cons on both sides. I couldn't articulate all of them.
There was just a letter to the editor in the Ketchikan paper advocating for at-large in Ketchikan, like the way we have, because they have assigned seats there. So you'll find that people on both sides of the question advocating for one or the other.
They are advocating for at-large seats
The
now.
person who wrote the letter was advocating for at-large, one person, yeah.
Do you have anything on the top of your head that's a pro for at-large?
I wish I had more on the top of my head. Most days when I look in the mirror.
I have to say generally or on this topic.
Um,
And I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to excuse myself.
I don't, Chanel. I'm just as a matter of inertia, I'm used to the system we have here,
Yeah.
where people who get the most votes get elected, which has an inherent appeal and struggling for the word I'm looking for, but it's on its face, it seems an obvious way to go, right? Since we're based on whoever gets the most vote wins the seat. Intuitive is what I was trying to say with at large, but it's also true that especially in a small town, you may not want to run against a certain individual because you like the job he or she is doing, and so that allows you to sign up for a seat other than the one that individual has. So there's some strategic thinking that goes on with the assigned seats. I don't feel strongly one way or the other at this point.
I think as a voter, it's like, so if you see two of the people you want on there running against each other, there's a disadvantage, but as running for a seat, you can pick which one you're running for, kind of thing. So, I don't know, I guess.
We'll do some research. I think I can know where I can find some background materials that might be helpful.
Okay, yeah. 'Cause I mean,
And we've done research before, but I can't remember how many, some municipalities do, some don't. I mean, I know Thorn Bay has assigned seats. I think Clearwater is open,
I think so too.
we are.
Mhm.
I feel like it might help people,
Anchorage has assigned
look
seats.
more
I think,
into
but
the.
they're-
By district.
Mhm. Each seat,
Like,
so that
the
they,
person
a
that they're
definite person for each
Yeah.
seat, right?
right? Like, if you do like both people that are running against each other, then you'll look into what they lean towards and what they plan to help do, I don't know, but yeah.
I assume that at least one council member would like to sponsor a resolution, or I guess I can come back with the research first.
Yeah.
How about that? Okay.
Just a direction at this point, to research it and try to get us some information on the difference between, what designated and appointed or whatever you call it, at large or,
Got it.
Brian, get on it.
On it.
Speaking of Medivacs,
Doesn't sound like very good line, does it?
Not really. No, because they use jets. Any council members have comments except for Chanel?
I think I'll keep it to myself though.
Go. Perfect. Are you done?
Yeah.
You want to leave now, Jim?
Sure, move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor of that?
Aye.
All right.
We'll leave.